everybody, it's Amy and Maggie.
Minasan konnichiwa.
We are headed back to Tokyo Game Market 2026, the spring edition. We have been very fortunate to make it to most of the recent Tokyo Game Markets.
Yes.
So we're back again. And as usual, I am headfirst in research. It has been months of just trawling publishers and designers.
Yeah, wake up and she's like researching. I go to sleep and she's just like researching. So
yeah. And there's still more games coming out every day, but it is now 2 weeks away and it is time to draw a line in the sand and to tell you about some of the games that we're most excited about. And usually our list is full of trick takers, but spoiler alert, this year there's quite a mix of games. And that doesn't mean we're not buying trick takers, because I've reserved like 50 games.
there's a lot of them. Yes, there's always a lot. Yeah.
We're going to talk about our most anticipated 20 and try and highlight some games that you may not have heard of, or you just can't be bothered reading all the rule books, which is fair enough, because who has time for that?
Yeah.
You
it's a bit of a mission to like get through all of them, translate them, try and figure out what, okay, this is how it kind of plays. All right.
Yeah, who has that many hours? This guy. All right, so let's get into it.
So the first games that we want to talk about are actually not quite part of the top 20. These
Bonus games.
Yes, so these are some that are going to be there, so we're kind of looking to pick up, but they're usually going to be either a reprint or some of them is a new kind of theme that's been sort of reskinned. The first one I want to talk about is a game called Dyson Crusoe, which is a solo like survival adventure, sort of obviously inspired by Robinson Crusoe, but is actually using a dice rondel mechanic, which I really love those survival type games where you've got to like gather resources and maybe even make some tools, but at the same time deal with the elements and animals. So I'm really intrigued by that one. It looks really cool from a table presence.
I knew you'd like that one. I found this one for Maggie because she does love survival games and it's solo. So, you know, and it's been really hard to find, which I like.
Yes. The other one is one that we have played. I believe it's pronounced He-Fu. And it is, that sort of stands for 1-2. And it's a trick-taking game. But the interesting thing about this is you only want to win 2 tricks in the round. And you kind of want to win your second trick as late as possible in the round. So we actually played this kind of
long time
when
ago.
we first kind of got into content creation. I think one of the first cons that we went to with Crystal Dax, who's a amazing person, and then we just could not wrap our head around this. But I was just like, I just don't understand this game. But that was before we kind of weren't to trick taking.
We were new to trick taking, and so now I want to play it again because now I understand it. We understand it. We've played so many hundreds and hundreds.
Because I just remember going, why am I so bad at this? Like I don't even. So very, very intriguing. The other one is Cursed Tricks. So these are actually both being brought back by the same publisher or group. And Cursed Tricks is more around like as you're winning cards, some of those cards that you're winning might curse a particular suit, which means that then you won't be able to gain points with that suit. But then that curse card can actually be passed around. So it's a bit of like a interesting one. And the final one is the game Don Quixote, which is a re-theming of the game Boast or Nothing, which at the same time the Portland Game Collective is also going to be launching, again, sort of another kind of re-theming of this as Best of Napolitan. So we actually do own Boast or Nothing.
We do. We found it randomly in a Japanese cafe, and I know it's been so hard to find the original because it has this wacky art.
It is, yeah. And like the whole thing with the game is it's a boast or nothing. So either you want to win no tricks or you want to win exactly the right number of tricks, which kind of varies. And so I'm kind of intrigued because with Don Quixote theme, the art is also looking kind of
it looks like
quirky.
They're trying to keep that like quirky art theme going, and of course it has the very famous changing suit hierarchy, which we see in a lot of games, and actually some of the games that are in our top 20 for Tokyo Game Market. So I want to add a couple of games before we get into the top 20 as well. You're like, when are you going to get to the top 20?
Jump in the timestamps if you are not into this bit. Yeah.
But there is a game that I would like you I want to suggest for you to go and have a look at, because we already own the game. It is After You Betobeto San. Now, this is by Mr. Ben and his wife, Mrs. Sam, actually. And Mr. Ben always says that he is a theme first, and that comes through in his games. In this particular game, it's based on the yokai folklore around Betobeto San, who is the Beto part is onomatopoeia for the footsteps of it following you, because, late at night you're walking down the street and Beto San is just creeping closer and closer closer towards you. And the only way to get rid of him is to turn around and say, after you, Beto San. And if you do that, then he'll go away. So that's what the game is based around. It has absolutely stunning art. And the way that it plays out is very unique, because if you have 4 players around the table, well, one player is taking the role of Beto San and the other play as the children. And the children are going to be giving, actually, from their hand of cards, 3 cards each to Beto San for them to play with. And the idea is Beto San is trying to hand out these negative point tokens that they start with, which they can do by winning the trick or by playing the same card as one of the children around the table, kind of like they're creeping up on you. So the theme is just fantastic. The artwork is incredible. And it's just a really interesting twist for a trick-taking game. And while you're at the travel game, actually their booth is also with Hiroken, who did Eternal Deck. So you'll be able to see that artwork. So you'll be able to find Beto San over there. But they also have another game called Tricky Landings. And I want to talk about this game because this is a game that I don't think Maggie will like, but I have a long list of those. So I want to tell you about some of those. Tricky Landing is a dexterity trick-taking game where you're going to be throwing the cards onto a target, and the way that the cards fall, the ones that are touching the target and the ones overlapping that card are going to form part of the trick, in which you're going to work out who wins the trick. Silly little game. But the designer had his daughter do the artwork for it, which is gorgeous. Yeah. And, you know, that's something that we really need to hero, because interestingly, Tokyo Game Market has now basically outlawed or trying to control AI use throughout games. And so AI art, yeah. And so it's really hard to do that. Obviously, some of it is still going to creep through, especially because these are all indie titles. And so we've also done our best to filter those out. But that's why when you see the artist being heroed, even if it's someone's daughter, that's really cool.
That's great,
So I want to also talk about a few games that Maggie is not excited about that were on my list, because I just want to talk about them because I've been researching for so long. So one is called Shima Enaga Dango, which is about the little cutest birds in the world. The little, very cute. They're called like the little long-tailed tits, and these little birds that live in the snow, you know, people would have seen them. When you see the images Maggie's going to put on screen, you'll know what they are. Yeah. But this is an abstract game where you are trying to essentially create rows of these birds. And so the physicality of this game is so gorgeous, so gorgeous. I'm going to try and find the game for Maggie to show you where the designer put up them in production. It's just like rows and rows, like an army of birds. But essentially you're going to be taking these birds, and on your turn you can either put one out or you can move one on the board somewhere. You're trying to create rows where you have the majority of birds in order to get points. And the points are little dango that go onto the stick. Cute. It is so cute. And I love abstract games. It's been a long time since I bought one. So this got me.
That is actually one of the biggest dangers of Tokyo Games Market is just like how many games that you didn't, know about, but then they're just so cute as you're walking past and you're like,
it's dangerous.
Yes.
And we've fallen trapped to just buying things without reading rules and things. So that's why we like to make a video like this. So hopefully it gives you a bit of a sense of how it plays, so you can kind of have at least another layer of discernment over.
Another limitation.
We're not always right though. Nowhere near.
No, well, you can't really know until you actually play them, and obviously we haven't played, any of the games that are going to be like most anticipated. We haven't played, so and there a lot of times is. Obviously from our list, one of our limitations is it can't have too much language dependency, because obviously we're not fluent in Japanese.
Correct.
And so that kind of then cuts out a lot of games that I'm like, oh no, that looks like it could be so great.
Yeah,
but
it is really tricky. Okay, the next one is Yokai 1504. So this is a TCG style game, but both players, so only 2 players, both players play with a symmetric deck. So that intrigues me because I don't really like asymmetry in games. I do prefer it to be symmetric, and then it's the best person who plays their cards out in the best way. And we got into Pokemon for a little while. We have since bounced off that hard. But the TCG thing,
I mean, it was expensive.
It was
really
very
expensive, and it's even more expensive now.
But this designer is actually the designer of Sail, the 2-player trick-taking game. So great, obviously designer as well. So I'm really intrigued to see what they do with it, and the art of this game is just so beautiful. Like I really love the style of it. So another one that kind of got me in with the mechanics and then really, you know, had me pressing reserve with the artwork. The next one is Plate. The Korean board game company who create the games that everyone will know them now, with the boxes that tend to fold out, and use the box in an interesting way. At the beginning with Plate, you know, for me they were a little bit hit and miss sometimes. I think they are really putting out some bangers now. They have had such a great run. Orapa Space.
Yeah, that was really
my
great.
gosh,
Yeah.
I love that game.
Yeah. And we have friends that are like, can you bring that game out again? Because they just like to play like head to head.
And we're like, no, never back, always forwards. No, that's a great game, which we have kept.
Game, yeah.
And they have a lot of new games coming out, a few that I'm interested in, but the one that I'm most interested in is called Finger Pirates, which absolutely is not a game that Maggie would be interested in, because it is one of those games where you kind of go 1, 2, 3, and everybody is bidding at the same time. And what are you bidding on? Well, you're bidding on picking boats that have treasure in them, or sometimes negative things as well. I think ghosts maybe. And so you want to be first in turn order to pick the boats. But interestingly, every round has kind of a different cap on the number of votes that the total can be. So if as a group you get greedy and everyone bids really high, well, the person who bids the highest actually has to pick last. Whereas if you all stay under the total, well, then you just go in descending order, and you know, everyone gets their position. So really interesting concept. The designer is the designer of Fairy, so the small little game that was kind of a similar vibe from All Play, but also did doppelganger tricks in a recent Tokyo Game Market, which we thought was, you know, okay. It's still in our collection. It wasn't probably the top of them, but I do like Fairy, so I'm really interested to see what Finger Pirates
Another
is
very,
like.
very simple, very silly game.
Very
but
silly.
It's a great
but
icebreaker.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And then the final one I want to talk about is by Itten, which is called Genjin Dice. So they have a series of new games that they've brought out that are kind of tiny cubes, and they're kind of fun and interactive, very simple games, probably games that you wouldn't spend more than 5 or 10 minutes playing, just like silly little kind of puzzle games. Yeah. And at this particular con, they have this game, Genjin Dice, that is not available for sale. So this is going to be a game that's going to be really hard to get your hands on, which obviously that is like catnip to me. But it's going to be hard to get your hands on if you don't get it here. And the only way you can get it is by buying 3 of those cube games, and you get this one for free. And this one that's for free is the one I'm most intrigued by, because it has clay in it. And essentially the game is everyone is going to be crafting their own dice. So you are going to make a die out of clay and put the little pips on it. And then you are all going to be betting on what the results of these handmade dice are going to be.
Okay.
So I don't know. It sounds really quirky and weird, and something you could only get at Tokyo Game Market as well. So I want to try and get my hands on that. Yeah. So have we spent enough time on all of these games that are not in the top 20?
Not the list yet.
Let's get into the top 20.
Okay, starting with our number 20, Scroll Trick, which is all about, like in your cards, you essentially have ninjas and they're trying to recover stolen scrolls. Now the scrolls, everyone's going to have like a set of scrolls. Some of them have positive points, some of them have negative points, because some of them are fake scrolls. And so the whole idea is that you're sending out your ninjas to try and retrieve these. But the way it's played out is the 3 scrolls, essentially, you're going to be allocating them at the start of your hand to 3 different cards that are going to be public information. So out of your hand, you're going to pick 3 cards, and then the scrolls are going to be placed sort of face down on them. And so you're kind of essentially going to try and trick people to win your negative ones, and you're trying to also decipher where other people may have placed their positive point scrolls. The interesting thing with this is, as the rounds progress, the higher, essentially if you're in the lead, you're going to have to reveal more of that information. So I think like at round 2, you're not playing all of your 3 scrolls face down. One of them is revealed, and then round 3, whoever's in the lead is actually going to show through 2 out of the 3. So yeah, very interesting in terms of that whole thing of, some of the cards that people have, and if you're gonna have to kind of force them to play that, but also trying to figure out, would I want? There's an element of, I imagine, bluffing. As well,
yeah, and I love that, like mechanically, that idea of like perfect information in one sense, and then you're covering it with imperfect information with the scrolls.
Which is what actually will matter.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be some element of it, of like you thinking that, you know, the easy to win cards, like I'll put a low value down, like that's going to have the negative points or something, and then you're trying to play mind games or second guessing what people are going to be guessing about your cards. So I'm excited about this game too. Actually, for our list, we went through all of the games together and we each gave it a rating. We averaged that. That's why I had so many that sat outside our top 20 that I wanted to talk about. But so this list is the average of our ratings. So that is our number 20.
Yes,
Scroll Trick. Now, our number 19 is a game by Yoshiteru Shinohara, who is the designer of two very, very different games. The first game that they did that we loved was Crossing, which is another pointing, simultaneous pointing and trying to steal gems from people. And then the completely different end of the spectrum, last Tokyo Game Market, they had my number one most anticipated game, which was Ouroboros Trick, which was the perpetual, like,
the snake that eats itself.
Correct, yes. And in the game, it was the same idea where you were trying to not run out of cards by playing out tricks and winning cards and playing out tricks again. And that game was our most anticipated. We did play that game. And just to give a quick summary of how we feel about that, it's a great game, but it's very short because it's one round only. And at the end of the game, you have the first person to like run out of cards. Essentially, it's the loser and everybody else is the winner. And it didn't leave like such a super satisfying feeling at the end. But it's a cool like concept, and so anything that this designer does I'm going to be interested in, and this one sounds super interesting. The game is Tandem Trick. Now in Tandem Trick, you are going to be playing a fairly regular trick taking game in terms of like must follow, but the interesting thing is that there's going to be a point in time where you need to place a bid. We've seen that before, so the timing of the bid can be at any time during the round, and when you do decide to place your bid, it's a card from your hand, and then you don't play into that trick for that particular trick. You don't play into the trick for that trick. But the more important part, and the reason why it's called Tandem Trick, is if you play on suit with the if you play on suit in the trick, you can connect your card to the card that the player on your right played. And so suddenly, you know, your 5 and their 3 join together, and now you've got this 8 that's super powerful, and it's beaten someone else's 6 when normally you would have lost the trick. And then you take the cards and you divide them in half, and you both essentially win. And so really kind of interesting dynamic where you're going to be teaming up with the person on your right. Obviously, as you play different rounds of this game, I imagine it would be useful to kind of mix up the players so that you are combining with different play styles. You don't want to have like the 2 best players probably teaming up on everybody all the time. But the other fun little twist of a rule in this game is that if you shoot the moon and get 0 tricks, you get 1 million points. And if you think about why that is, it's because if you decide to shoot the moon, the person on the left to you is always going to be able to probably make you win a trick just by, you know,
very easy to sabotage.
Exactly. So that's why it's 1 million points. It probably doesn't happen now, but that's become my life goal, is to make that happen. But anyway, that is our number 19 Tandem Trick.
Our number 18 is a game called Mate, which is by Leo, who has done a lot of really interesting games.
And always so cute. She is the master of making cute games.
Yes, so the artwork is always super amusing or intriguing in some way. So you may know Leo's designs from, let's see, Pâtisserie. Vivo is probably one of the most kind of widely
It got picked up by All Play.
Yes. A Fine Line, which was actually really, so it's like the designs can either be really, really simple and accessible, or like really like kind of tricky and like, wait a second, what's going on here? One that I really like is also Salty. As well.
Complex.
So that one's kind of, that one's a little bit more complex, but also such a quirky theme about like kind of salty and like different condiments. And so, well, with this one, with Mate, it's like the cutest theme, because it's about teaching puppies how to wait. So Mate is like, but it's also, if you read it in English, it's like mate, which is like a friend, or that's very Australian, like always mate.
Mate.
But yeah, Mate is sort of like wait. So you're teaching your puppy to like sort of like sit and wait. And so the whole idea is that some rounds are going to be a wait round, in which case you don't want to be winning tricks, and some rounds are going to be the yosh, the kind of go rounds, and then that's when you kind of go, yeah, come on, like, and then that's when you want to win, which is super, super cute. And so this is looking like it's going to be one of the, like, on the kind of simpler, more accessible side. But one twist with this is every round, there's also going to be, the trump is going to be dictated by a number. So it's actually a value, not necessarily a color of a suit. And there's also going to be a particular condition that, again, was sort of, which is sort of similar to, I think, like Vivo had another kind of similar elements of like a simple kind of twist that kind of determines the trump or what's kind of happening in the round. So I'm looking forward to checking this out, even though it's more I do tend to enjoy the quirkiness of Leo's more complex design.
Is Salty your favorite design?
I would say so, yeah. So I think Salty's my favorite.
Patir is probably mine.
Is really good.
Yeah,
Patir, I think, was a good balance between like, oh, it's simple, but it's sort of tricky enough that like, and super cute as well with like,
because they're scared of the thunder.
Yeah, they're scared of thunder. So it's like cats and dogs scared of thunder, and you end up like kind of collecting all of them. So so that is number 18, Mate.
Okay, so I promised there wouldn't be that many trick-taking games, and when the last three have all been trick-taking games, the next one is not trick-taking, but it is shedding. It's our number adjacent. It's adjacent. Our number 16 is Kindoro. Now this got our attention straight away because it is the designer of 535, one of Maggie's favorite shedding games of all time, which we own as Oh Meow Bow, which was the kind of re-skinning of that game where there's a little poop token. But anyway, so anything this designer did, we would be paying attention to, and I really enjoy the mechanics of this game. The cards themselves, not that cute or interesting, but the game plays out like this. You're going to be playing cards down into 3 different piles in the center of the table, and there are 3 vaults that are above those columns of cards. So the vaults are going to tell you whether it's up or down, i.e. whether you have to play above or below the value that's underneath it, and it's going to give you a value itself. So it might be up 3, which means you need to play something higher than a 3. Pretty simple. And on your turn, you can play between 1 and 3 cards, and the objective is to get rid of all your cards. But the fun little thing is that you can play melds down as well. So when you play a 3-card meld, this is how it works. If you play a run of cards down, they still have to meet the objective of all 3 of the vaults, which is kind of challenging to do. Or you can play a set of cards, and that gets to ignore the vaults completely. So if I have 3 7s, I can just put those down, ignore what the vaults are doing. But if you play any type of 3-card meld, you get to go again. And so you can kind of puzzle it out. So I can play this run that's going to meet the conditions, and that's going to then allow me to play another turn, and then I can play these 3 7s. And so you can surprise, I imagine, the table by going out pretty quickly in a sequence of turns. And so I really like that kind of element in games. The vaults do change as well. So it just seems really interesting, and I'm looking forward to giving it a go. And that is our number 17, Kindoro.
And our number 16 is one called Blancat, which is about making blankets for your cats. But they're very tricky or picky, and they actually like their old patterns. So this is going to be a real-time racing type game where everyone has this sort of a pad with all these different strips of colors, and a particular pattern of color kind of combos is going to show up, and you have to fold these strips to create the same pattern with your individual blanket. And it's that whole thing of like, as soon as you finish, you kind of grab one of the cats, the last person will lose points. But also if at the end of that you realize, oh, I actually made a mistake, you're also going to lose points. Very simple, but I imagine very energizing, probably stressful, and is that whole kind of like color, sort of color figuring out, how do I do this? And they have like an advanced variant, which is to essentially not just fold it and make the pattern, but fold it and fold the straps within themselves, so that it's actually like they don't fall out. So it's essentially
like stitched in.
Yeah, so it's kind of like stitched in. So that's Next like the level. Advanced mode. Yeah.
I really like these puzzle games that are real time and you're racing around the table. I did want to mention that the designer of Blancat is also the designer of Flamenco, which is a trick-taking game that's coming out with Beppu art. It didn't make our top 20 just because it feels a little simple maybe for our taste, but I am still going to buy it and I'm still going to give it a go. And then I also wanted to mention, before Maggie gets mad at me, that there are 2 other race games of this style that kind of caught my attention. One was Spot Me Gaffer, which is a game where you essentially are trying to be the first one to spot different circus performers.
Yeah,
Thanks.
it's like the gaffer is like
the spotlight.
Like,
And so you've got these like cutouts of sheets of holes in them, and you're trying to spotlight the right people faster than anybody else. And the other one is called the Moire game, I think it's called, which is a type of pattern where you have, you know, two parallel lines that kind of, or two line patterns that go across each other, and they give you that optical illusion. And you're trying to recreate a pattern by putting those on top of each other. And the designer, interestingly, did this for people who were colorblind, who couldn't play those other types of games where you're layering colors to make color combos the fastest, which is really kind of cool. So I want to check that out too. But anyway, sorry to hijack your number 16.
Blancat.
Now, our number 15 is a game called MofuChip, which is another trick-taking game. But in this trick-taking game, I think, firstly, the art is absolutely gorgeous. This is going to be one of those games that everyone will buy just because of the art. Like, it is stunning. But I read the designer diaries, and what was super interesting is the designer purposely chose to really hero the art by having, like, really clean, minimalistic design otherwise. And usually cards have a white border around them so that when you shuffle, you can't see this edge and the color, the suit of the card. But he purposely said, I didn't want to do that because I didn't want to interfere with the art. And he's like, it's a small price to pay. And then reading the rest of his designer diary, he was very, very like kind of purposefully trying to create a light trick-taking game that heavy gamers could enjoy, because he tends to actually design towards heavy games. And so he's like, I just want to make a game that everyone just wants to continue playing over and over again. And so he made MofuChip, which essentially is a fairly simple trick-taking game, but you're also given some chips. And these chips have, you know, +2 on them, or they have they allow you to change the suit of a card that you're playing. So it is up to you when you choose to put those out there. And, you know, if you're a card counter, obviously you can kind of suss out, you know, when is the right time to play those chips. But also if you pass, you get to collect more of those chips. So it acts as a bit of a catch-up mechanic as well, and because you're collecting more of these chips as you go. So yeah, I don't know, it sounds really simple to me, but the artwork is gorgeous. Cannot
it really
deny.
It looks great.
It's going to be a really popular game at the con. It is our number 15 MofuChip.
Our number 14 is the game Haunted Sweets, which is such an adorable theme in that you're a pastry chef and your shop is being pranked by a ghost, and so you naturally decide, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll just send this ghost over to my rival pastry shops, because obviously, you know, the ghosts are very like sweets prone, like they like the sweets, and it's going to cost you, so it appears that it's going to cost you sweets to get rid of the ghost, but then it's also going to cost sweets to, you know, whoever you send them to. And so there's also this whole thing of like managing your stock, and so there's going to be these dice that you're going to be able to kind of make, put together, and they'll have 3 faces. So as you roll them, you get to pick 2 of the faces, and then the other face is going to be for the player on your right. So one of the key things with this is you also don't want to go over your allocated stock. So you can kind of push someone to go over stock, and that's sort of like an immediate lose. But the other thing is, when you're receiving ghosts that are coming in from other places, it's going to be decreasing your reputation. And ultimately, you know, the winner is going to be the one who ends up with the most reputation at the end of all of this kind of like throwing and sending ghosts around. So really cute and adorable as a theme. I'm really kind of intrigued to see how it actually feels like when you play through it.
And so Maggie will say on the channel that she hates like take that style games, but the reality is Maggie's the first to employ those tactics in a game. She is always
mostly with you.
She is always looking at what I've got going on, and she will always pick the bad option for me. Always. Like, so don't be thinking,
how can I mess up your game?
Do really not be fooled into thinking she's the nice one.
Not with other people, just with me. So that is our number 14 Haunted Sweets.
And number 13 is another really cute dog game. But this one's actually by a Thai designer, which is really cool. It's called Name It. And this game is essentially, I can explain the whole game to you very quickly. It's a pile of dog cards. In the first round, you're going to be revealing them. And the first person to say the breed of the dog gets ownership of that dog. And when you have ownership of the dog, you get to name the dog. And so in the second round, we reshuffle them again, and then we turn them over. And now it's the first person to say the name of the dog that gets to collect the dog. However, if the dog happens to be wearing a lead, then you don't say the name of the dog. You say the name of the owner of the dog, the person who names the dog in round one. And if you do that correctly, you get to take the card. The person with the most cards at the end wins the game. Silly little filler party game, but I just think it's really clever. The artwork is so cute.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah,
like, it looks really good.
Really cute. I do think though, in the background of the artwork, I think there's like...
It says the breed
it
in
does,
Japanese.
in katakana, I think, it
Yes.
has it. And so if you can read a bit of Japanese, you're probably going to have a bit of advantage. But, you know, most people will probably know these common dog breeds anyway. So maybe it will take you just as long to read.
Or like one round, or like one game of it to be like, okay, those are all the breeds.
You're
and
like,
then like
Pagu.
yeah.
Oh, Pug! And
Yeah,
you'll be too late at that
I think
point.
the real challenge is going to be like the extra rounds when it's like
Yeah.
then remembering the name of the dog and remembering that like, oh, who owned this dog, or like who was the human.
So cute. That is our number 13, Name It.
Our number 12 is the game Cant Win by Taiki Shinzawa, who you may know from games like Ghost of Christmas, Mask Men, No Loose Ends. It's just a huge list of games. And so this game also has art by Saibepu, who we adore, and it's just like every time like an incredible range as an artist as well. And so this game is essentially one of those you have to kind of guess how many tricks you're going to win, but also every single round you'll be given a particular condition, a limiting condition, usually dictating what are the cards that you're going to be able to win with, or different kind of So essentially you're going to have those limitations from round to round, and then you're also having to predict the total of tricks that you're going to win. It's sort of like I'm kind of intrigued. I think largely that's not a concept that is that like, oh my goodness, like so unique, but like the artwork and the I think it is
like recently new, but there's games like Keshaz, which you know is a Taiki game that reminds me of that a little bit, or Trick Taker's Guide to the Galaxy, I think was from last Tokyo Game Market, which was a more design, which was the one, you know, with the...
That one's really complex in terms of like all the different goals.
the goals and the things,
that you were very heavily penalized if you didn't meet, and not that highly rewarded if you did, even though they were like super difficult.
So I think it's going to be maybe a more accessible version of that style of game, which I'm all for, and I think it sounds really good. With Taiki Shinzawa, very mixed reaction to his games. Some of them I absolutely adore. I did really like Keshaz from a recent one, and Quattro Trick Taking. The most recent one was a shedding game called Dodicetre. Did not like that game at all. So really, you know, a bit polarizing, but I just always am going to check out his games, I think, because they're always interesting. And Saibepu art, what's not to like?
Instant win. So that is our number 12, Cant Win.
Now, our number 11 is a game called Fagioli, which in Italian means beans, and no... Even though in this game you are planting beans, it is not Bonanza.
Very
so
different.
Stay
to
with me. Yeah. It is also a card game, but it is neither trick taking nor shedding. It's really a strategic hand management game, and this is the way that it works. On your turn, you're going to be playing a card from your hand onto one of two piles, and they're each going to have, you know, different numbers on there, potentially the same number. But if you play a card onto one of the piles that is higher than that card, then the difference between your the number on the pile and the number you've played, you're going to take in cards from the top of the deck. So if it's a 3 and I put a 5 on it, 2 different, so I'm going to draw 2 cards from the deck. However, if you play a card that is lower than that number, so on the 3 I play a 1, then the difference I'm actually going to take out of my hand and plant those beans down into the fields in front of me. And those are going to be victory points at the end of the game. So ultimately, you do want to be playing cards from your hand down into your field. However, if you ever have more than 6 cards in your hand, or fewer than zero, meaning you can't plant even though you were meant to, then you bust. And when you bust, you're going to have to draw a new hand of cards, but you also get penalty points in the form of like negative points for the end of the game. And so you are constantly trying to balance, how do I keep this small range of cards in my hand?
Very much. hand management. Quite literal hand management.
Literally, you're trying to like make sure you've got enough cards, but at the same time, when I get too many cards, I need to play them down.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly just, calculating what is the range of the difference. And probably you have to keep quite a range of cards in hand too. So you might not plant that card that's worth the most points because that's going to give you the most opportunities later on. So I just think it's really interesting, and that's why it's our number 11 Fagioli.
Our number 10 is a game called Masquerade Trick Party, which is actually, it looks like a re-implementation and a bit of like a level up of the game Masquerade Trick, and now with Cyberpunk art, so again, level up from a aesthetic appeal. Now, this is the same designer team that did, I'm gonna have to read the names, Best Family Forever from Today. That's the title of the game, which is this really kind of cute and quirky shedding game that we actually picked up last Tokyo Game Market, and we really kind of enjoyed because it's like, oh, it's so unique. But in Masquerade Trick Party, you all are going to have a hidden role, and as you're playing, you're going to have essentially a mission or something that you're trying to accomplish throughout that sort of round, and then at the end of it, you're also going to have this voting stage where you're going to be pointing your rose token to whoever you think is the target role. So at the start of the round, you'll have the target role will be this. And so throughout the game, you're trying to figure out based on how people are playing is what I'm imagining. You may be that role, or it could be you, or it could be, so you have that kind of second opportunity to kind of guess correctly. Yeah. And so, so it's kind of a couple of ways of
so
getting points.
You have to hide that you're going after the objective. Like, I'm sorry, that's all I had. I had to, it's all I had.
Yeah, so that's intriguing as a kind of double layer trick taking, but also hidden identity or hidden role type game. So that is our number 10 Masquerade Trick Party.
Now, our number 9 might be my favorite party game on this list. I just think it's going to be such a good time. Okay, so do you remember the game Banana Boy versus Unicorn? When Charles Ward gave us a copy of that, he said, hey, you might want to check this out. It's designed for kids. And then when we featured it, we were like, we love this game. And he was like, I made that for children. I did not expect there would be kind of a role for it at, an adult gaming occasion. But we found it. And this one is the same. This is a game called Kabaaan, which has been designed by Panini Games for children. But when I read the rules, I was like, this is too funny not to share.
We are children.
We are children.
At heart,
but in this game, essentially everyone's going to have cards, and those cards are going to depict fruit on them. And the objective is to put the fruit cards in order from smallest to largest face down, while everybody trying to deduce who has the largest size fruit. And the way that you're going to communicate that to the table is not through words. It's not through anything other than your mouth. So you're going to use how wide you open your mouth to show what.
I was already clicking my jaws, right? And that's, I think, that's one of the warnings.
That's healthy.
That's one of the warnings that they put in the rule book.
Be careful. You gotta limber.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's use an example. So imagine I had you had blueberry. How are you gonna show that you've got blueberry? Okay. What about an apple?
So
what about a peach? Similar size to an apple. That's a pretty small peach.
I don't know. I tried to gauge your mouth as a separate.
Okay, what about a watermelon?
Okay, so I don't know if you're gonna try. I don't know if you're trying to recreate the size. You couldn't, or if it's like you can't use your hands.
Maybe. Maybe it's like those limited communication games where you kind of work out people's the range of.
Okay. So it's like. So that's part of the game. So that's going to be part of the discovery.
Kaba is actually hippo in Japanese. And so Kabaaan is kind of like a hippo with a wide open mouth. Yeah. So that is the game. And I feel like if you can bring this to your table and not have people laugh playing it, then get new friends. Just throw those ones out.
It'll be silly, for sure.
It'll be silly and fun, and that is why it's our number 9, Kabaaan.
Our number 8 is the game Haratama by Shibu, who's also the designer of games like Peter's 2 Sheepdogs, Lazy Bellboys, Clumsy Roommates, Bitcoin.
Balance the Arc from last
yes.
Tokyo Game Market. I would say if you see all those games, I'd be picking up Lazy Bellboys. It is
really
a
good.
great 2-player game. Really, really clever.
Peter's Two Sheepdogs is my favorite,
Not
but
gonna
that's
find it.
impossible to
Not gonna
find.
find it.
Yes. So this one, Haratama, actually refers to like a cleansing ritual. And in this game, you are playing as a group of psychics that have been taken over by an evil spirit. So you now possessed, and you're actually trying to ward off all the rescuers that are trying to come and like essentially perform the exorcism. And so you're one trying to do that, but the other option is as one of the types of cards that are going to be played around is these sort of sacred artifacts or sacred objects, and they're usually going to be negative points. But if you manage to collect enough of them, actually you get to do the cleansing ritual on yourself and essentially like develop like purify yourself, your own exorcism of yourself, and regain your sanity is what they say. So I think it's going to be an interesting one in terms of that dynamic of different things. Yeah.
Now Shibu actually has another game coming out, The Women That Zeus Loved, which is a really funny concept, but May didn't really gel with the theme as much.
Yeah, you're essentially trying to help Zeus cheat on
his wife.
Yeah, but it's like, they're all
terrible people.
Yeah.
So
or gods, I should say. They're all kind of not great gods. So yeah, but it's like, it's fine. Yeah. So so Haratama is our number 8.
Now, our number 7 is a game called Snowball, which has 2 great things going for it. One, it is a rondel, and I love a rondel. 2, the publishing group, or the design kind of circle, as they call it in Japan, is Gomikokusai, and they did Storm in a Teacup. Now, let me tell you, that was the breakthrough hit for us of last Tokyo Game Market.
Excellent, yeah.
Absolutely fantastic game. They haven't said whether they're going to be able to stock it again at this Tokyo Game Market, but if you see it, snap it up. What an amazing shedding game. Anyway, so because of that and because of the rondel, I was all in on Snowball. Snowball, essentially, you are making your own rondel in front of you. So it's going to be a little bit multiplayer solitaire, because on your turn, you're going to be playing a snowball into your rondel, and then you're going to be moving your snowman according to the value of that snowball. But that's not all. If you play a snowball of one value next to the same valued snowball, they merge and you get rid of them and you get a higher powered snowball. And the idea is it's the first person to get to a size 8 snowball. So it's a race, it's a rondel, what's not to like, hyper competitive, love it. That is why it is my number 7. But that's not all. The same group have a game coming out called Kotori Pachi, which is about bumping birds. And so it's a cooperative trick-taking game where there is a branch and there's all the different birds are sitting on it, and the objective is collectively you're trying to push this pesky pigeon off the end of the branch. Poor pigeon.
Yeah.
Poor pigeon. But anyway, that is the objective, and what you don't want to do is accidentally push one of your teammates off the branch instead. And so that just sounds like a really cute concept too, so I have pre-ordered that as well. Wasn't on this list, but great design group, so got to do it. That is my number 7, Snowball.
Our number 6 is the game In Order to Chance by Yusuke Matsumoto, who is the designer of games like Nokusu Dice, Final Binary, and 10-12 Heart.
Look, he might be my favorite designer, I think. And it's like, some of the games are so not accessible. Final Binary, it's totally wacky.
Brain-breaking game.
Hard. But just, I was like, the whole time you're playing the game, you're like, who thought of this?
Yeah.
It is wild.
It's very clever, though. Like, so smart.
And we haven't talked about 10-12 Heart on the channel yet, so I just want to talk about that quickly, because in this game, essentially, it's only a 4-player game. One person plays as the person setting up the game, so they will deal 3 hands, then they'll look at them, and then they'll place bids based on what they think is going to happen as the game plays out. And then you've got 2 people, A and B, who are playing against each other to try and hit their bids, which that person who set up the design is going to be revealing 1 round at a time. And then another person who's just trying to cause chaos, player C, who just wants everybody to fail their bids so that you don't get any points, and the players who... Anyway, so complicated, and you end up playing like this solo game
initially where you're like, it's like, okay, everyone just go and like
do something
else, and it's like a mini solo game at the start. And it's like, okay, everyone can come back, and now we'll reveal these objectives.
Super fascinating. If you like really interesting designs, pick that up. But anyways,
we're here to talk about In Order to Chance, and this one is interesting because you're actually going to be bidding for these cards that are going to be kind of like in the center, kind of coming out.
Not a trick-taking game.
Well, no, and so as you're bidding for these cards, the interesting thing is as you're bidding, obviously you have to kind of like go higher than what's already been there, except for the players on your left and right. And why this is important is because once the bid ends, the winner will actually also, it'd be like the first place winner, and then the second place is going to be related to like the person on the left or right that is also like the highest, for example, of the next sort of highest. And so when you're taking these cards, the whole thing with these cards is you're actually going to be creating a bit of a tableau that has it scores based on different colors and symbols and adjacencies and kind of locations, but you're kind of committing to the location of these as you're playing it. So it's like it will eventually develop a bit of a 5 rows by 5 columns, but it's not like it's sort of like a bit of an angle, and then you can either go like next to it or skip a spot, and so then there's also, this reminded me of the game High Society, because there's still going to be these exclusion cards that you don't want to win. And so in this one, you're actually then trying to bid for the lowest possible. And so like whoever ends up getting like kind of stuck with them, essentially you're going to be able to kind of get those cards back. But everyone else that, whatever bid they put in, they're going to lose those bidding cards. And again, you're also going to be dragging in the person on your left or right, depending on, again, that's sort of like next value thing. And so the thing with those exclusion cards is if you're stuck with them, they're going to cancel out some of the cards that you have been building on your tableau. So I think it's going to be really intriguing to see, because it's all very much around the scoring of those adjacencies and how that tableau kind of gets put together. But then also this layer of, as you're bidding, you're losing, if you win, you're losing the cards that you're bidding with. So it's obviously making you then weaker in terms of subsequent bids. So
it's interesting how, as trick-taking has become much more mainstream, a lot of the like really well-known trick-taking designers are now like trying to move away from the mechanic and do something different. So we are seeing that a lot, and a lot of auction games this time around too.
So that is our number 6, In Order to Chance.
Now into our top 5, and our number 5 is the Pâtisserie of Fairywood. Now this is a really intriguing game. It's a bigger box title, and the pitch or hook of this game is essentially it is a worker placement game where you are making baked goods to sell in your patisserie, but it's not the cozy nature of this game that drew me in. What drew me in is that it is worker placement with a trick-taking must-follow mechanic. And the way that works is every player is going to have a set of dice that have different values on it, and they're going to play it on top of a column that represents a type of action. And then anyone else who has that value has to follow, i.e. they have to do that same type of action on their turn, which is really cool. Super novel, haven't seen it done before. And it also has that, the more common thing of, well, if you choose a more powerful action within that, then it's, you're less likely to go first next time and that kind of thing as well. So essentially you are collecting different cards, and you're trying to collect resources so that you can achieve these recipe books kind of thing. So yeah, just like a resource collection order fulfillment game, but with this really neat must follow mechanic. Now, the designer goes by Nekuron, and interestingly, he's the vice president of the Japanese Twix Association. And I didn't know anything about the game Twix, but it is an incredibly abstract game that is compared to Go, and it was made in the 1960s by Alex Randolph. I did not know anything about this game. Now I know a lot about it, but it's one of those games that, you can play for a lifetime trying to perfect. And he also competes in poker and in Magic the Gathering. And so I think a mind like this, putting their design, their first board game design out there, it's going to be mechanically interesting. So I'm intrigued enough to give it a go, and that is why it is our number 5, the Pâtisserie of Fairywood.
Our number 4 is the game Hit Plan, which is actually by the designer of Love Letter. which is quite interesting. And it's also like one of the artists is Beppo as well. And the whole theme of this, I'm so intrigued by this. So the whole theme is you are trying to essentially get the best IP, so intellectual property, to be able to kind of like make movies and make, you know, animes or novels and things like that. And so the way it actually plays out is you're going to be bidding in a way for the IPs as they show up. But you have this whole thing of like, as you're selecting what card you're going to play, and that can either be a bid of how much you're going to try and like what value you're going to use to try and get that, or you could actually also be playing an anti-piracy card, because the other threat that you have is like, yeah, you can get this great IP, but then all of a sudden like people pirate it and ends up being, as I think it's like bootleg Blu-ray discs is one of the cards that can show up, which then is like, oh no, like I'm going to lose the value of my IP. So as you're kind of playing, you can decide whether you're going to be going to bid for the IP, or you're going to be kind of help fight piracy. If you manage to succeed, like that's the other thing, when everyone plays, and if anyone plays the same card, they cancel out. So that's the other like, no, and then you're kind of out of that sort of that element or that round. And then this is the interesting thing. There's also going to be an event that gets played. So once you kind of cancel the cards that were the same out, then if there's someone that bid for that IP, they may win it. But sometimes the event might be not necessarily that the highest value, might be like the lowest value gets to win it, or the event might actually be a piracy thing. In which case, if someone had played an anti-piracy card, then that's great, because then that person still gets to gain the IP, but the person that played the anti-piracy card is essentially canceling out that piracy, and they're getting to have like that card with like 6 points, I think it's like, which is actually quite good, because the whole game is a race to 12 points. So the IP in and of themselves, they'll have different values of points, and then some of these other action cards that you play will also have potentially different values of points. So I just really enjoy this theme.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's kind of quite unique. And
I think this game was developed in conjunction with the industry body that actually monitors the IP.
Makes sense.
I'm pretty sure it was developed as an educational tool, which would make sense why they would pull in such a a well-known designer. So I think, don't quote me on that, but I think that is the case, which is why it's been notoriously hard also to find out information about this game.
One of the cards is like public education about like why you should like seek to buy original kind of IP, not bootlegged or kind of pirated works.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that you can play that can kind of help, and they all kind of work in slightly different ways. So yeah, really, really intrigued by this. Looks kind of really interesting and fun. So that is our number 4 hit plan.
Now, our number 3 is a game called Maison des Cartes, and it's been translated into Many Stories Mansion. Now, this game is by Jupiter's Club, and we have really enjoyed the games by this Korean, usually team of designers, but they have some strange games. So like the sloth game, the Too Sloth to Win, that kind of came in like the energy drink container. The last one was the Magic Shop that came in the DVD case. Very unusual choices.
Yeah, very quirky production choices.
Very quirky production. This one comes in a jar. So if you're hoping to put these all neatly together, it's not going to happen. But the reason why we both are really into this is the artwork just immediately is just so gorgeous. And it actually is the work by one of the designers, Anouk Kim, who actually did this artwork themselves. It is stunning. And the way that it plays out is you are trying to shed all of your cards, but the cards are pretty simple in that they only have colors and not values, not numbers on them. And so you can only ever play, you can't change the order of your hand, and you can only ever play cards that are all the same color, or cards that there's exactly one of each color. And when you play them, what happens is they fall Tetris style onto your house, and that creates patterns in your mansion or your house that you're trying to build in certain ways in order to maximize the points you gain. So there's going to be patterns that you're trying to recreate to get points. But the tension is that there's also people trying to shed out and end the game. And if you end the game, you get a cute little roof that goes onto your house and you get extra points. But basically you're trying to work out, do I have time to like slowly shed so I can build up the patterns that I need for points? Or is someone going to shed out? Or am I going to shed out and force everyone to not get the patterns that they were working towards? So that is essentially the game. But the art, this is just like show-stopping art. Like, it is
very cool.
beautiful. Yeah, so that is why it's our number 3 mini stories mansion.
Our number 2 is the game Oshaka Trick by Keita Kasagi, who is the designer of Identity, which was one of like our favorite, if not my favorite, kind of more recent games in terms of, like just theme-wise, the whole like trying to be like unique. So it was like a must-know, follow, rank or suit. It was just so simple and yet so well done. And so, well, in this one, Oshaka is an idiom around being too greedy, like essentially one act that kind of pushes you over to the greedy side. And so the whole game, as you're playing, is actually going to be a lowest rank wins. But when you win cards, you're actually going to decide whether or not you're going to commit those cards to like these sort of columns by suit. If you do that, you have to make sure that you are going to be going strictly in ascending order and that you don't win any cards that now wouldn't fit. Otherwise, if you do, and they're like, well, now they don't quite fit, those cards are placed sideways and they're going to be negative points. If that doesn't happen, then the advantage of that is if you're kind of going little by little and you're creating that ascending stack, your highest value is going to be positive for you at the end. So that's why it's like, oh, are you going to get too greedy and go like, yeah.
I love it because you have to decide at the time whether it's going to be turned over worth -1 point.
So wait, so that's the other thing. Well. I haven't said that. So it's like, so you can either commit them or you can actually turn them over, as Amy said. And then it's like going, no, I'm not going to risk it. I'm going to turn them over, and they're all the cards that I'm collecting are -1 point. Which is possibly like better if you're like, oh, these are all already too high and it's too early on in the round, and I feel like, this is overcommitting. So
I love that tension. I love that tension because if you get, say, an 11 card, you want to play it face up because that's probably going to be the highest in that suit that I might be going to collect, and that's going to be worth 11 juicy points. But if you take that too soon and then you collect like the 9, well, that's you're in trouble.
-9 points. So it's like those things become negative at their value. So it's a real
tension
risk. And then there's also this other layer. It's a 2-round game. So in the second round, you also have a limitation if you can only win, you can only kind of lock in max 3 of the suits. So there's 4 suits in total. So it's like, you can't sort of be going for all of the suits as well. So there's all of these kind of restrictions of like, trying to be moderate, I guess, in every aspect of it. So that is our number 2 Oshaka trick.
Now let's get on to our number 1, because people always ask me, what is your grail game? And when you're a board game collector, that changes, but for recent years, it has been a game called Sumida River, and it is a game that I've looked for every time we've been in Japan. I haven't been able to find it. It's almost impossible to find, and now it is back. It is re-implemented into Sumida River Red Town, which is a slightly different theming, but essentially it is this famous game by Masakamaru, who has quickly become one of our favorite trick-taking designers. So if I just want to pause to talk about the last 2 Tokyo game markets, in case you do see these games around when you're there. The very last one was Take Over That Job, which was a cooperative game where essentially you had to try and get 2, 3, 4, or 5 tricks using your hand of cards, and then once you tried to do that and hopefully achieve that, your whole hand and the rest of the things that you were trying to achieve, your objectives, my job, is going to the next player, and eventually everybody has seen the hands of cards that are in play in that round, which is like across rounds, which is so fascinating, like just a really cool game. And then the Tokyo Game Market before that, he had My Own Sunny Day, which was an amazing like timing game about when you took a trump card and made it trump just a personal trump for you versus when you then shed that away again. So really, really interesting designs. And also he does have another game coming out. It hasn't been announced yet, the title or anything. It is another auction game where everyone's playing with different currencies, but you don't know what the value of those currencies is going to be. So that sounds interesting too. But this one, back to Sumida River Red Town, is a shedding game where you are not necessarily following the meld that has been played before you. What you are doing is you're playing different types of melds into different locations that are demanding different meld types from you. And in this particular version of the game, you are playing as kind of gangs that are trying to take over these territories, essentially, is the theme. So you're going to be playing these melds out, and there's this really interesting dynamic around, so you're trying to shed all your cards, but where there's assassin cards, and at the start of of the round, everyone is going to decide whether they want to take an assassin card or not. And if more than one person says yes, it's going to force you to trade hands. And so you're going to get an assassin, but then you're going to have to hand this off to someone else to play out for you. Whereas if only one person says yes, then they get these kind of great wild cards, assassin cards into their hand. So lots of interesting things going on here. I cannot wait to get my hands on this game. And, you know, with Grail games, are they ever going to be as good as you had in your mind?
You'd really never know until you try them, and you're like, oh, well, that was a waste of, you know, a decade chasing a game, or like, hey, that actually really lived up to all of the hype this whole time.
I mean, that's where the fun is, right? And, you know, we had so much fun pulling this list together, so we hope you've heard about some games that have, you know, been scribbled onto your list. There are so many other good games too. As you can tell from this list, we really struggled to keep it down to 20. I personally did. I snuck a lot of extras in there. If you see us around Tokyo Gamer, come up and say hi. We'd love to meet you and talk about what games you've picked up. Have a great time out there, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. Oh, like and subscribe. Do it. See you soon. Bye.